Good evening or morning or wherever it is you are. My name is Antonio still. We're going to be talking about the Meike cinema lenses. Now, this is a quick look. It's not going to be a crazy in-depth numbers video because numbers don't really matter unless you're packing for lightweight or size, or actually maybe numbers do matter. But if you do want the numbers for both of these lenses, the Meike T2.1 35mm and 85mm for PL mount, these are the specifications. Feel free to pause. Otherwise, let's continue on with the video. I'm going to tell you my thoughts on these two lenses for a sort of a practical standpoint, how I felt with them. Now, I'm not a cinema guy. I'm more of a photographer guy. I do video. I'd classify it as videography more than cinematography. So although these lenses are cinema lenses, I'm still going to give it my best shot at reviewing these. I hadn't actually heard of Meike or Meike as a brand until maybe a couple weeks ago. And I reached out to them, asked them if I could try out these lenses and see what I thought. So Meike did send me these. They're not paying me. I'm not getting any commissions or anything like that. This is just my honest opinions. Now, to get further on with the video, I was a little bit surprised by these lenses. I'm pretty sure Meike is known as like a more budget-friendly brand, and these lenses I think felt, in my mind before I received them, I wasn't actually expecting that much because they're not like a super crazy expensive cinema lens. They're like a pretty, I'd say, entry-level cinema lens, and I wasn't looking for like really good sharpness or clarity or anything like that, but I was pretty impressed. I took some photos with it, and as I said, I'm not a cinema guy, but I am a pixel peeper. I had a close look at some photos I took on a 24 megapixel sensor, and I think on a 45 megapixel sensor as well, and I was pretty impressed at the sharpness and clarity, even while manual focusing it as best as I could with no focus peaking turned on in like a fast-paced photography scenario. I was pretty impressed. Now, I did take some videos with both of these lenses. I think they performed really nicely. Let's have a look first at the 35mm. Now, apologies for my swooshy sounding jacket that I'm wearing. I'm a little bit cold. Now, this 35, let me make sure my top-down camera can actually see properly. In terms of how these lenses feel compared to each other, I would not be able to tell the difference. If you handed me one and then handed me the other and I was blindfolded, I couldn't tell the difference. They feel the same, they move the same, the controls are the same. So whenever I talk about these lenses, I'll just be talking about how they both feel in general because they're so similar to each other. In terms of the quality, the construction, I think it feels very precise, like the way that your mounts fit onto the end feel very precise. Sometimes there's a little bit of a tight squeeze. I don't know if you guys can see this on the camera. Sometimes there's a little bit of a tight squeeze getting this on and off, which if you are on a bit of a strange angle when taking these lenses in and out of the mount, it can be a little bit difficult because they're so tightly machined. Sorry about that loud noise just there, but once they're on. They're not going anywhere. You've got these nice fins on this adapter here to lock it down nice and tightly. I am a little bit wary about the weight of doing this on the actual camera mount itself. I use these without any lens supports very carefully. I don't really think you need lens supports because I have lenses that are heavier than these that I use with no lens supports that don't come with any lens supports. So I'm assuming it should be fine. Now, my only dislike with these is that the lens caps, let me stick this under the camera again. The lens caps that come with these are, at least for the Z mount, I don't know about the E mount or the RF, on the back of this adapter, it feels a little bit like it doesn't quite stick on. You sort of have to really twist it a bit to get it on there. Other than that, that's about it. This does have a weather sealing gasket around the end. Make sure you guys can still see. This does have a weather sealing gasket around the outside of the mount. In terms of the actual lenses themselves though, let's have a look. It does feel like there's a little bit of some kind of rubberiness there, but it's not, I don't think it's weather sealed, but we would have found that out in the beginning of the video when I showed the specs on the screen. In terms of the controls on the actual lenses themselves, if I lock this back on here, I really like the feeling of the aperture ring. It's quite smooth. It's very, I would say, it's smoother than a lot of manual focus lenses that I've used. It's a non-clicking aperture ring. Make sure you guys can see this in here. It's a non-clicking aperture ring, and it's very, very smooth. They're in obviously the T stops, not the F stops, because it's a cinema lens. The T2.1, if I can speak English, is about the same as I think like a 1.8 or 1.9 roughly. Now in terms of the focus ring on these lenses, this is the 85 here. They're nice and smooth. I didn't feel any crazy differences. I think the 85 feels slightly tighter than the 35. I don't know if it's just my imagination, but when I compare the two side by side, I feel like the focus ring on the 35 is a little bit easier than it is on the 85. That could just be a fitment thing, I don't know. That's the only difference between the lenses that I can actually feel. I don't know if it's an actual difference though. The next thing is you've got your aperture rings, which is on the same, they both feel very, very similar on both lenses. I've noticed on one of them, I don't know if it's with all of their lenses, maybe it's just the particular one that I got, there's a little tiny bit of tightness around that T2.8 area. Let's make sure I can get that on camera here. Not that you'll actually see it on camera, but it's really, really smooth from T22 all the way to about 3.5-ish. And then it gets a little grippy around this kind of 2.8 area, which isn't a huge deal. Actually looking at the aperture inside, I don't know if you guys can see that in there. It doesn't actually appear to be having any issues at that T2.8 area. I think it's maybe just something, maybe they didn't deburr it properly in one of the areas. It's such a minor thing, you wouldn't actually feel it unless you were really trying. Other than that, both of these lenses feel very good. In comparison to a lot of lenses that I've felt, these do feel quite nice. This is a really good example, this 85. You can really see the aperture blades in there as I'm opening and closing that. They're really, really smooth, they're really precise, and notice how round that hole is as well, as it's supposed to be. If my top-down camera will focus in there. Should do, give it a second. There we go. So the hole, the aperture, is very, very round. I have a couple older manual focus lenses, and I do have one cinema lens, which is, it's not a crazy good one. And I do notice that the circular shape to the aperture does actually get slightly deformed at super, super narrow apertures and at super, super wide apertures. Now let's talk about this thing here. This is the, get that in the view there for you. This is the Meike PL to Z adapter, and this particular one has the drop-in filter. You can get a clear filter and you can get an ND filter. This particular one is an ND3 to 500, which I'm not sure what measurements that in, but normally I have like a 1 to 5 or a 5 to 9 or a 1 to 9 stop ND filter. So I don't know if that's 3 stops to 500 stops, but that seems like a lot. I know that it does work very well. I did notice though, when I put a CPL filter on the front of the lens, by the way, both of these lenses have an 82mm filter thread. When I put a CPL filter on the front, I was getting some weird cross polarization from the inbuilt mount ND filter and also the CPL on the front, which was a little bit annoying. You could correct it in post, but if you're changing exposures with your ND filter, it's gonna change the color. I don't know if that's, I mean, I assume that would be normal if you're combining a couple weird ND filters and CPL filters that are different brands. Anyway, this is a really cool filter, and I really like, not a cool filter, it's a cool gadget adapter, and I really like the ability to have one ND filter that's built into the mount, the adapter, that will work with all PL mount lenses. I'm definitely probably going to be using this mount whenever I need a cinema lens on my Z mount camera. Anyway, that was the quick look at these lenses. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video or found it interesting, and I guess I'll just catch you in the next one.